Hello, people. I'm in the deep end of the pool trying to do this because I think I figured out that the background here with the plants, it keeps that white fuzzy shit from showing up, which has been kind of ruining my videos. I finished the book. I don't know if that's showing up or not because I can't see the fucking screen. The title of the book is In Search of a Kingdom. The subtitle is Francis Drake, Elizabeth I, and the Perilous Birth of the British Empire. Kind of a weird book. What makes it even weirder is I think the Magellan book that I read was written by the same guy. I don't have my Magellan book here. At least I'm not aware that I have it here. I think Magellan is up at the cabin. So I can't check it to see if it's the same author. And yeah, I can Google that, but I don't remember the exact title of that Magellan book. This was published in 2021, yes, as a brand new book. I bought it at Books A Million down here in Florida, and it's 397 pages. I read a little bit more. I read some of the acknowledgments and a couple of other pages. I started out really liking this book. For one reason, I liked it because, like, on page 13, Magellan is sailing from England to on his trip where he circumnavigates the globe. And Magellan was the second, or Drake, I don't know why I keep saying Magellan. Drake was the second man to circumnavigate the globe, and he was the first one to do it successfully, meaning that he lived all the way around the globe. He returned to England, which, of course, Magellan did not. And not very much of Magellan's crew survived either. November 15th, 1577, that's when they left. And, of course, after I wrote that down, the book goes on to say that they got caught in a storm and they had to return to port and you know, like a 2-month delay to fix what had got fucked up in the storm. And it's funny because a lot of these books, when these fleets leave to go, you know, the Spanish Armada, the same thing happened. They get caught in a storm and they have to go back to port. It happens over and over. And here I'm going to have a problem because I'm trying to stand in the deep end. Bottom of page 16, historical perspective. And I like historical perspective. Tell me what's going on elsewhere. And it helps me figure out where I'm at in history. And in this book, like a lot of others, completely ignores Germany, which would have been the empire at that time. And these pages are really hard to turn. Actually, I like these pages. These are pages that I like have a rough edge. Bottom of page 16. Oh, and they're talking about Amerigo Vespucci. Vespucci's reputation would have faded were it not for a quirk of fate. The New World might have been called Columbia, after the most celebrated and notorious explorer of the continent, even though he thought he was approaching India. But in 1507, a year after Christopher Columbus died, a German cartographer, Martin Waldseemüller, produced an enormous world map naming the newly discovered continent America, after the feminine Latin version of Vespucci's first name, Amerigo. Protests were raised on Columbus's behalf, but Waldseemüller insisted, "I do not see why anyone should justifiably forbid it to be called America, from its discoverer Americus, a man of perceptive character, since both Europa and Asia have received their names from women. The name stuck. That's too bad I can't like fake a German accent for that. I probably could if I would have practiced or something. Historical perspective. The book is giving me some info on what else is happening at this time. Second paragraph, page 30. After this, I don't think I have a whole lot of reading to do. I really struggled through the last 1/3 of the book, and I'll get to why. After something bugs me in a book, I kind of, it's like going to a restaurant and getting sick. I'm never going back to that fucking restaurant. Second paragraph, page 30. All the while, the Holy Inquisition, designed to combat heresy, excuse me, deprived Spain of some of its most accomplished and wealthiest inhabitants, as it had since the 12th century. When the influential Pope Innocent III declared, anyone who attempts to construe a personal view of God, which conflicts with church dogma, must be burned without pity. The Inquisition's rituals, especially the auto de fe, travestied legal proceedings and inflicted cruelty for which Spain became notorious across Europe and later South America. The auto de fe was intended to instill fear, and it accomplished its goal with ruthless efficiency. And I did Google auto de fe, and they kind of made a real pageant out of marching the condemned out, before a big crowd, and they had special clothing that the condemned had to wear, and then most times they would burn the guy to death. The rite usually commenced with a procession of monks, followed by officials, and finally those condemned to perform public penance, or even worse, be burned at the stake. These were prolonged exercises beginning at daybreak and lasting throughout the day, by which time the stink of burning flesh and shrieks of those being tortured filled the air. This note says, I'm reading a lot of books from the same time period, and the Treaty of Tordesillas. And the Treaty of Tordesillas is just something that keeps coming up in all these books, especially if the book has some kind of a nautical theme. The Treaty of Tordesillas, some pope decided to drop this treaty, this law, that divided the world in half on a line of longitude, and one half belonged to Portugal and one half belonged to Spain. That's the way it was in the 1500s. Those were the two big powers. This book kind of shows the beginning of England becoming a world sea power. I mean, at the same time, you had the Dutch, too. They were also in on this. Third paragraph, page 72. And of course, the last, a couple books ago, maybe it was even the last book, but it dealt with the Dutch and some of the stuff they were doing. Third paragraph, page 72, 1, 2, 3. The next day, the fleet set sail, her crew refreshed and ready for whatever the sea brought their way. Of all the pilots Drake cajoled or kidnapped on the voyage, De Silva remained with Drake the longest. Although he proved an accurate guide and Drake relied on him, his skills were limited. Like other pilots of the era before longitude, De Silva employed only latitude sailing. This crude but effective technique meant that a ship got onto the desired latitude and stayed with it until the destination. And I talked about that also in one of the last books, and how important the prime meridian was, and how that came about. It helped not just with sailing the right direction, but once you could plot something on a map, with latitude and longitude, somebody else could find it after you were there. Then I started to have problems with this book. He kind of started to repeat things. At least 10 sentences in this book talked about how Drake began his career as a slaver, but then grew disgusted with the practice of slavery. Easily 10 times. I had to read that same sentence. I get it. I can remember that. 5 years from now, I might forget that, but while I'm reading the fucking book, I'm going to remember. Quotation marks. This book takes freely from things that people wrote at the time. The word divers is in there a million times. And I don't mind that. Go ahead and quote from stuff that's been written. But I actually found 2 or 3 spots in the book where the quotation marks were only at the end, so I had no idea where the borrowed sentence started. It was just kind of weird. Anytime I get to where I'm complaining about something like that, it means I'm having a problem with the book. And then I have it's written here, this is where this house of cards that this book is starts to fall apart. Second paragraph, page 206, and underneath that I have, huh? Bear with me while I find fucking page 206. I'm treading water while I'm doing this, so. God damn. Alright, here we go. Second paragraph. Now that Drake had sailed beyond Spanish-controlled waters, he focused on finding a northern ocean route from Europe to the wealth of the Indies. The legendary long-sought-after Northwest Passage. Today, we recognize that no such route exists, but in those days it was an article of faith that a Northwest Passage could be found. That he's totally wrong. There is a Northwest Passage. Amundsen did it I'm not going to guess at the year, but it was in the 19th century. Amundsen was the first one to complete the Northwest Passage. And before I started to rant here on this video about it, I did Google it. And after you Google something, stuff comes up in the Google News for you about what you have Googled. And I saw a story in there the other day that said, people can foresee a time when there's going to be more ships using the Northwest Passage than there is using the Panama Canal. And I thought, is this guy just mistaken? Maybe he was just talking about then because there was more ice back then than there is now. Boats are using it now because there isn't that much ice. But there's the sentence again. Today we recognize that no such route exists. Well, it does too exist. And most people know that it exists. I don't know it. And then I have written down stroke. Did this guy have a stroke in the middle of writing this book? That's a huge mistake. Even if he's talking about the route over Europe and Asia, that also exists, and that has been done. And it continues to be done. The Russians are fucking using it all the time. Then I have Devonian written down there. Drake was born in the county of Devon in England. And all of a sudden, for about 5 pages, he refers to him as the Devonian. And then doesn't do it again for the rest of the book. I just thought that was really weird because Devonian, is a geologic age. I have Cadiz written down here. Drake, while he was doing his circumnavigation, he robbed and plundered the Spanish. He was a pirate. He was a pirate with Queen Elizabeth I's permission. In fact, she got him started. She got the ships and money and crew, and she wasn't supposed to be okay with this. Philip, Philip, the King of Spain and Portugal, complained about it and threatened war, and Elizabeth, was always like, well, we don't really want him doing this, blah, blah, blah. But Drake brought back just tons and tons of gold and silver that he stole from the Spanish. He also went on a big raid to the harbor of Cadiz, which I think is Portugal, but Portugal and Spain were literally the same thing at that time. And he had a very successful raid in Cadiz. I actually brought some loot back from that. And then he was kind of a key figure in this whole Spanish Armada thing. And that's kind of the end of the book, is the Spanish Armada. And really, Drake dies at the end, but there's like 2 pages to go to the end of the book. He dies of malaria, and he's, I think, in Panama. He's at sea. He's on board a ship. He dies there. And then I have something here, the second paragraph, page 355, and that's it. And we'll wrap up this video. And I'm having a real hard time finding these pages. Just keep in mind, I'm treading water here. I'm leaning on the fucking wall, and it's starting to hurt my arms. Second paragraph. Sailors who washed up in Scotland were often treated with a measure of compassion and eventually repatriated. They're talking about the Spanish Armada, which sailed to attack England, wasn't able to do it, and they got so fucked up. It's just incredible. They had to keep going north, then turn west, and go all the way back around the British Isles to try and get back to Spain. Less than half of them make it back. And eventually repatriated. In his compendium, Hack Lewitt wrote that 400 Spanish soldiers, after their shipwreck, were brought into Edinburgh in Scotland, and being miserably needy and naked, were there clothed at the liberality of the king and the merchants, and afterward were secretly shipped to Spain. Local authorities, in regard of their manifold miseries, though they were enemies, winked at their passage. Starting to get ants crawling on me. This is the empire of the ants here in Florida. A few Spanish sailors settled in the Orkney Islands, an archipelago extending north of Scotland, where their descendants are known as the Dons. Chickens that survived the wrecks created a special strain of fowl called Armada chickens. So that's it. I don't know if I recommend this book. I had said that I wanted to know more about Drake. I know a little bit more. If I see something else about Drake, I'll probably get that too. I am not on another book, but I'm going to start one tonight. Thanks for watching.